Our next speaker is Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Land O'Lakes. He started his first IT company at the ripe old age of 14. He turned down scholarships to William and Mary, as well as an appointment to the Naval Academy to go to Cornell to become a rocket scientist. How cool is that? He also had a baseball career at Cornell, and as a matter of fact, he is still second on the all-time stolen bases list. After leaving Cornell, he went into the defense industry at Allied Signal. He was in flight controls and then quickly moved over into business development and then finally into M&A, where he worked on acquiring Honeywell. Today, he is in addition to his job at Land O'Lakes, he is assistant coach in his 9-year-old son's traveling baseball team. If you've ever had kids in a traveling sport, I think that's a full-time job. And if you ask Mike what he enjoys doing, he'll tell you he likes planning family vacations. And I was thinking, how cool would it be to have a rocket scientist plan your vacation? Think about all the places you could go. And with that, please join me in welcoming Mike Macrie.
Thanks for that introduction. I mean, I never really thought about it, but applying artificial intelligence to the optimization of routes in Disneyland is actually an open market opportunity, I think, because I haven't found anything out there that helps me do it in the most efficient manner. My name is Mike Macrie. I'm the Senior Vice President and CIO of Land O'Lakes, and I think I've really made it because I realized today that once you're on stage here at Pros, that it's the first time I've ever had Jim Collins be my opening act. So I feel I've made it if Jim's opening for me. But if you've heard Jim before, and we've had Jim out at Land O'Lakes a couple times for our leadership conference, what he says is just amazing, and the way he uses data to prove it, and the way he eloquently puts to paper everything that goes on in our heads if you're a change agent in your company. But for the rest of us, we have to make it real. And so what I'm going to do for you today is tell you our story at Land O'Lakes. It involves flywheels. It involves a 20-mile march that started well before I joined the organization. But it's a really amazing story of transformation. I thought I knew what transformation was before I landed at Land O'Lakes. I changed a lot of businesses. I changed a lot of plants. I did a lot of work. But to see a business go through the transformation of its business model is very different from just adopting new technology. I'm going to take you through our story today and tell you a little bit about it. Now, when you think about Land O'Lakes, what's the first thing you think of? Somebody. Butter, right? Butter. Butter is our history. I'll talk about it in a second, but the reality is that we are much, much more than butter. Butter is only 25% of our business. We own Purina Mills. We're the largest manufacturer of animal feed in the country. And we have a really great history there in all of our animal nutrition products. We own a company called Winfield United. We're the largest distributor of ag inputs to America's farmers. We touch half of America's farmland. So to get your head around that, that's about 100 million acres that we touch, and we represent over 400,000 farmers. Most people don't understand that piece of our business, and it's growing at a much faster clip than our butter business. And lastly, a couple years ago, we just started what we're calling our sustain business. Not only are we helping America's farmers grow more, but we're helping them grow more with less each and every day. So, our company was formed in 1921. We were not born with a silver iPhone in our hands. But back in 1921, if you looked at what these fine gentlemen did up here, they were the disruptors. They were being annoyed that all of their sweet cream, butter, and milk was being shipped to New York City from the Midwest, and it passed through so many people's hands that by the end of the stage in New York City, they were getting almost none of the profits. So they wanted to disrupt. If the internet was there, they would have been farmersdirect.com, and they would have been done with it. But they weren't, and so what they did is they formed a cooperative in 1921 to bring their really high-quality products to New York City and cut out all of the middlemen. They disintermediated a lot of people, caused a lot of noise, and at the end of the day, we're still the only national brand of butter in the country. Land O'Lakes has a unique view of the world. Because we're a farmer-owned co-op, that gives us a little bit of an advantage. We're privately owned. We're probably the second or third largest co-op in the United States. But we also put our farmers first. And when you put your farmers first, you take a very different view. When your farmers are your customers, you take a very different view. So our portfolio has been integrated from seeds all the way through to the products that end up on your plate. That gives us another view. The things we do both on the farm, in the field, the way we nurture that animal, and the way we bring it to market, we can see the entire supply chain. And we make sure that quality is there from the seed all the way to your plate. So as we started on our journey, and I'm going to tell you about this journey, we found that there were 3 things that we needed to get started. The first is purpose. If you don't have purpose, you don't know even what direction you're headed. And sometimes you have to have that guiding light of your values, as Jim talked about this morning, and ours is feeding human progress. I am one of the luckiest guys in the world because, and some of my teammates are here, because we come to work every day and our goal is to feed the world in the most sustainable way possible. Creating shareholder value is not a purpose. You have to have both. You have to have money. You have to make money to do it. But ours is feeding human progress. It's grounded in our rural values, and it's grounded in the things that makes farmers who they are. You also have to have vision. You know, a lot of companies who set out on their journey just don't have a vision and don't have even a concept of what's achievable. In some of our subdivisions where we started some of this transformation work, as I talked with some of the senior executive team, one of the biggest failures we're disappointed in is the failure of imagination. And you have to think about how time has elapsed and how fast technology's changed things. Many senior executives are between 55 and 65. When they went to school, only if they were in an engineering class did they have access to punch cards. And everything else that's happened since then, maybe they've kept up with it, but maybe they haven't. They're coming from a completely different fundamental understanding of how business and strategy were created, how businesses perform, and the stuff that was taught in the 1970s is very different from the stuff that's taught in MBA classes today. But you have to have a vision, and our vision in our Winfield unit was that American agriculture was going to be radically changed by the infusion of information technology. We didn't know exactly how, we didn't know exactly why, but we knew that in 15 years' time, technology was going to radically change American agriculture. We started down that path. But the last part is, and so many companies fail here, even when they have the perfect vision of where they want to be, you got to have courage. You have to figure out how to make the time, resources, and money available to invest in the future. If you're always focused on the next quarter, the next month, you'll never change your business. It doesn't matter who you are, what industry you're in, you have to have the courage to invest 15 years out, 10 years out. You have to make it a priority. You have to figure out how to make the best people and the most talented people on your team available to help set that vision and drive. And I was lucky enough to work with a number of people on the executive team who had this courage to start down that path, that 20-mile march to their vision. So what's specific about our journey? One thing to realize about Land O'Lakes was back in 2004, things were not well. We were on the verge of default on a number of our debt issues, and it was a very unhealthy company from all metrics that you could measure. And so in 2004 to 2008, our current CEO, he was landed around 04, 05, and he had to shore up the company, shore up the balance sheet, shore up operating profits. Well, everyone was asked to cut. Every single function, every single person. They basically divested, I think, 70% of the businesses we held at the time because they just simply weren't performing. And so we went through a massive portfolio repositioning from 04 to 08. We focused on the lowest cost imaginable. We had to get out of these debt covenants. We had to get the company profitable. And IT, though, eventually, when you got to the end there, it became a barrier of growth. By 2008, Land O'Lakes had regained its footing, and we focused on 3 simple businesses, which I showed you at the beginning: crop inputs, feed, and dairy products. Now, these businesses started to grow. They started to have an infusion of cash. But IT was so far behind in 08 that we were a true barrier. When I got there in 2010, phones didn't ring. The place was very low cost, but we were still running Windows 95 on every machine. And many of the systems hadn't been upgraded in over 15 years. I had a mainframe that was running and kind of smoking in the corner. I had a AS400 that took up like the size of this stage and ran like one process every night. I think it cost us $100,000 a year in power alone to run something that was like half as powerful, or not even a tenth as powerful as your iPhone. So you could just imagine that all of this needed to be upgraded. So from 2009 to 2012, we set out on what we called our Bedrock program. We needed to upgrade the foundation. We invested $95 million, and because of that investment, we started bringing in talent. I was brought into the organization under that leadership team to go after this. It's mainly focused in our core, things like CRM, PLM, the core ERP. Salesforce and Oracle were big partners for us, and we've shored up that foundation. But what happened was we did so well with the basics that confidence started building. It started building in the organization, started building in the IT group, and we started to change what we were working on. The business leadership started to talk to us about, well, I read about this on the internet, or I saw this in one of our competitors, or I saw this at Disney World, and do you think it's possible? Do you think we could market that way? Do you think we could do things differently? And so we began an era where the business started finding money to give to IT. They started asking us to do more, to innovate. And what we focused on there is, as we went through this transformational and tried to follow up on that vision on how it was going to change our crop inputs organization, we started to set out to develop things for those farmers, those customers of ours who are at the end of the supply chain, who seek to benefit the most, and at the end of the day own Land O'Lakes. Well, after 2 or 3 years of development, we came out with a number of proprietary solutions. It changed the very fabric of this organization from one who distributed crop inputs to one who distributed insights and innovation down to every farm. The first tool in the upper left, that's our biggest win. It's called the R7 tool. And I want to tell you just a little bit about this tool because people don't understand what farming's like today. This tool analyzes the crop yields of every piece of land in the United States for the last 40 years, and in less than 10 seconds selects the right seed for this year, optimizes it, sends it down to a tractor, and the tractor can drive itself. Now, we developed that 5 years ago. It's not all automated today for one simple reason. We can't get broadband connections in rural America. The second reason why it's been a little bit delayed is simply that farmers didn't believe it. Even though the technology's there, we can't forget about the change management aspects of our role. Our salespeople didn't believe it. The channel didn't believe it. The farmers themselves refused to believe that a computer could do better than them from a statistical analysis perspective. And we fight that battle today. But what we're seeing is, we believe, the third revolution in modern agriculture. First was mechanization of the farm. Second was the introduction of biotechnology to the farm. And the third is going to be this radical change and infusion of information technology. A couple of the other products up here that we put out there, the field monitoring tool that monitors every piece of land in the United States looking for anomalies before the human eye can see it, and then dispatches people, which goes to that handheld device on the bottom left. That's our NutriSolution tool that allows you to test soil and plants out in the marketplace. And on the bottom right is our latest tool that we just launched last year, which can now forecast the economic value of the crop and help you make decisions in real time as to whether or not you want to apply something else to the crop to gain the yield. See, all the first three are all about yield, but the last one's about profit. And in the end, we need to reduce the risk of America's farmers and help them earn more profit, because farming incomes are going to be at a 9-year low this year. Doing all this, my presentation isn't on this innovation, but the reality is this: by the end of the first 4 years, we became the largest distributor of software to America's farmers in the country. We continue to outperform many of our competitors who have spent 100 to 1,000 times the money on these problems that we have, because we put the farmer at the center of what we did. We didn't do it alone. We did it with partnerships. Partnerships with companies like Oracle, Salesforce, Tavant, HCL, Microsoft, who we have a marquee partnership, all helped us with different pieces of the puzzle to make it happen. So we're at the top of our game now in 2016. Our company, through this whole journey, was on a 20-mile march. We set like 12 of 14-year record earnings consistently. Last year was another year of record earnings in 2017. But the reality is that we saw a storm brewing on the hedge of our horizon. We weren't confident. We had that healthy paranoia. We saw extended periods of low commodities. We're in year 4 of what we thought was an 8 to 10 year run of low commodity pricing, which really affects our margins. We saw mega mergers in our suppliers. If you're following what's going on in the chemical industry and the seed industry, they're going from 5 or 6 large suppliers across the globe down to 3. We saw patent expirations across a number of our products and our suppliers' products, which was going to reduce the net income of our company. E-commerce was nipping at the edges of agriculture. We believe Amazon will come into agriculture. We believe it'll take them longer, but we don't believe that they're going to give up. And we know that they're pilot testing it in certain regions. We can't stay stagnant. And lastly, these mega suppliers, as they're getting together, are constantly trying to figure out ways to go around us, just like we did when we took dairy to New York City. And so how do we continue to add value to America's farmers in a way that prevents them from going around us? And so as we looked at this, our transformation took another turn. We had been very much focused on the customer to this point. We had gained a lot of ground. It felt really, really good. But as we looked at our ability to continue to react to the marketplace, we needed to turn our attention internally from a digital transformation perspective. Our culture, our clock speed, and the way we made decisions just wasn't keeping up. We were set on a clock speed that ran once a year. You buy seeds once a year, you plant once a year, you take care of it once a year, and you harvest it once a year. The ultimate cyclical business. And the reality was technology is a much faster animal. How do you release new software versions every couple months, not once a year? How do you get salespeople to understand what the new technology is doing to their products in real time? How do we react to weather conditions basically day to day, not 5 months, 2 weeks, 3 months out? So we had to reimagine our company's operations. So we started to take all this innovation, this digital thought leadership we were doing with our customers, and turn it inward. Now, when you do that, it really creates a problem because you have all these assets, you have all these processes, you have all these people who are built around business models that were frankly established in the 50s and 60s. In my business, many of the assets that we own were built in the 50s. So it's not a short putt. And so where do you start? We had to start with a data-driven culture. I firmly believe that if you're going to compete as a traditional company in an AI-enabled world, you have to figure out what's core to you, you have to figure out where you're going to compete, and you have to start with a data-driven culture. You're not going to outrun Amazon, Microsoft, and Google on AI. I would challenge that any company would have a challenge doing that. So how do you take the AI, take partnerships like the ones we have with pros, and use it in the areas where you can create sustainable competitive advantage? But to do that, you have to change the way you think about your customers. You have to change the way you think about your company. And for us, it's really driving that data-driven culture. We needed a culture of science and facts to start with, but then you need a culture of athletes. It could always be better. You can always take some seconds off the clock. You can always create more productivity. You can always do it cheaper. You can always do it faster, and you can always do it more customized with every customer you have. You had to have a culture of teamwork. It was about that end goal. It's about the goal of the company. It's not about the individual. It's not about my performance, but how do we get there together? How do we help that farmer produce more with less? You have to have a culture of speed. Speed is the new new commerce today. After basically cost and quality, speed is so important. Time is the only asset that can't be created. It's the only one we have a limited amount of, and you never know when it's up. So speed has got to be a critical part of any company's culture moving forward. You have to have accountability. You have to hold people accountable. And then you have to have that culture of curiosity and creativity to help find those innovations, to help navigate the sea as you move forward. So that was I have an hour-and-a-half presentation just on that, but we don't have that time today. So where did we start? We started in digital marketing. For our company, marketplace back, insights to innovation, we said our marketing function just wasn't keeping up. We had basically not transformed marketing for over 30 years. Yeah, we did some advertisements on Google, and yeah, we did some advertisements on Facebook, but it wasn't wired together. We didn't know if someone, clicked on a Facebook ad and then went to our website, and then did they buy in the store? And how do you do that in a B2B2C channel? So omni-channel Romney became the battle cry. There's a very simple metric. Romney, easy to understand, right? Romney, easy to understand. Return on marketing investment. Put $1 into marketing, what are you getting out? Omni-channel, though, how do you do that? I ran an ad during the Super Bowl, but I don't know what Target or retailer they showed up at. So how do you make Romney work? Well, with new technologies and innovation, we're getting there. We're in year 2 of a 4-year plan to get to where we think we need to be. It doesn't happen overnight, not transforming, a 90-plus-year-old company. But we're having a lot of successes, tracking people through the whole ecosystem of the internet, deciding which type of marketing investments are brand building and which type of investments are specifically to drive sales. And then the ones that drive sales we are tracking through the omni-channel marketplace. So what came next? Well, many of you are pricing experts in the room, far more informed than I, but I remember I had a session at my last company just before I joined Land O'Lakes. It was the last week that I'll never forget because it was very insightful to me. It was done by the Monitor Group. I know Deloitte's here, but the Monitor Group had a very simple slide that stuck with me. It was very simply this. If you put enough time and energy to take $1 out of cost, it drops $1 to the bottom line. But if you put enough time and energy to increase your price by $1, I think it adds like 10x to the bottom line, like $10 to the bottom line is the typical averages. And I said, why wouldn't we take all of our time and energy and put it on to raising prices, right? If you can get more value for your product, geez, what an impact that's going to have on the bottom line. So at Land O'Lakes, our next step was in pricing. And we had a lot of opportunity. I'm going to be upfront. We were very spreadsheet-based. Because of our historical culture, it was a historical thing that one size fits all. We didn't have a lot of compliance with our contracts. We had gaps in how we got rebates and coupons from customers and trade promotions from retailers. It was all over the map. We had very limited visibility to that leakage from when the price went out, the MSRP, down to that net price at the end of the year. We had margin leakage a lot of places. And really more importantly, because we could see it, the inefficient price administration. We may change a price, and it wouldn't get into the system in the invoices maybe for a week or 2. And when you're dealing with commodities, that's a big deal, right? When you're dealing with a grain that's moved, could move 50 cents, you're selling billions of tons of this stuff, you got to get that price in there as fast as possible. That's something the oil and gas industry figured out a long time ago. But in agriculture, we're a little bit behind the times there. So that was our pros project objective. We wanted to transform our pricing from being tactical to being strategic to drive efficiently and basically increase our gross margin. Eventually drive revenue growth, but right now it was about gross margin. We implemented with a hybrid approach. I call it WAGILE. I'm from a standpoint of I'm a big agile believer, especially when you're in the market with something in front of consumers and customers. But the reality is that you can't do all change in large organizations in an agile manner. If all your factory workers come in and the thing changes on them every single day, it's just not realistic that they're going to keep up productivity and production. We partnered with Deloitte and pros on it. We focused on data and business adoption. What did we do? Well, we drove visibility through analytics, used the guidance tool through segmentation, we enabled control, and we facilitated simplification. We went all in with the pros 2 sets, and it's had a really good impact for us. We had very quick business results. You could see it almost overnight. Very quick ROI, significant process improvements, elimination of spreadsheets and access systems, much more proactive decision making, a much bigger enhanced team experience. The people on the pricing team were feeling valued much, much more than they were in their old roles. And they're adding value now on telling us where we can improve pricing, take more margin now, much more of an impressive dialogue with our groups. And it was the foundation for a continued digital transformation. What were our key success factors? Well, these are some lessons learned, and some of our businesses were better than others, but data foundation and data governance is key. One of our businesses on the implementation had to be delayed 6 months while we just went and cleaned the data. A couple others went very smoothly, but in one, we had to get it right. The data was there. We had it all, but it wasn't linked up, and we had to invest time and effort to get that data correct. You have to have an executive sponsorship and a change champion. there has to be that constant pressure for people to change in large organizations. Many people in large organizations just think this is the change of the week. It'll go away if I put my head down. I'm just going to work 9 to 5. Maybe it'll disappear. Maybe it'll fail. You have to have that constant change champion driving the change that's necessary to be successful. And lastly, you have to have sales, marketing, and pricing alignment. And this wasn't too bad for us when we entered, but when it got tactical and in detail, you realize that the sales guys and the marketing guys weren't talking as much as you thought they were. And they weren't really aligned on the strategy for the year. Yeah, the big metrics, yes, but the tactics, no. And so when you get into pricing tactics, when you get into marketing tactics, they have to go hand in hand. You know, they have to always be in sync, especially if you're chasing Romney, return on that marketing investment. How do you make them work together? There's no use running a big national marketing campaign if the sales guys aren't ready to follow it up with actionable intelligence on the ground. They have to be connected. So as we finish this, we also realize that there's a lot more here from an AI perspective. We have an AI group that works separately on big data problems, and we're starting to connect that now into our pricing modules. Things like opportunity predictive analytics. One of the coolest things that we've done is we've scraped every menu in the United States off the internet. We've analyzed them for who sells the most cheese, and now we're calling the people who sell the most cheese. Well, what do you think our return rate is on that? Since we sell butter and cheese, it's pretty high, right? We used to do cold calling inside sales, calling restaurants. We used to segment them a different way, high end, low end. Now we're micro-targeting those calls and a much higher closure rate, almost double the closure rate that we had in the past. You know, personalization's happening, campaign management, all this is going to come back together and affect pricing as we mature in all of these other areas. So what's next for Land O'Lakes? Well, as we look internally, I'm not talking about the ag tech and the things we're doing externally, but internally, it's all about our supply chain and financial operations. As I alluded to, our supply chain was built probably in the 1950s. It's been somewhat modernized. But in agriculture, most companies don't even have barcodes on their products. We're inefficient. We don't know where our inventory is. We don't know how much is reserved. All we have to do is look at many of you out there and many of these other industries, take the best of what you have and bring them into agriculture, and we can solve many of these problems. Additionally, our finance operations need to improve. We need to do less on accounting and much more in FP&A, much more forecasting, looking at the future, management reports. If we can forecast better, there's so much cost that we can take out of our organization. It's amazing. How we structure inventory, how we position it. Because you might not know this, but cows are affected by weather. Seed production's affected by weather. So the more we can improve and manage that risk, we can take millions and millions of dollars out of our organization and improve it. So how can you digitally transform? Well, first and foremost, I encourage you to focus on the consumer. And I don't use the word customer for a reason. We're in a B2B2C business, and it's very evident that the B2B part is becoming less and less valuable. When we have conversations with people like Walmart and Target, they measure our value on what we know about their consumer. So whoever the last consumer is in your chain, and there are some B2B businesses where you're selling to a business and they're the consumer, right? But if the last consumer is the most important part, and you have to have a hyper focus on them, on what they need and what they want. You have to demand that data-driven culture. You absolutely have to. The emotional arguments of the past, or this is the way we've always done it. Technology and the world is changing so fast that the things you knew just 3 years ago are probably out of date. You have to stay up on market intelligence. You have to stay up on what technology is doing. How would you build the company today if you had a clean sheet of paper? It'd be very different. How do we take steps to get there? You have to embrace agility. Don't fire your one cannonball if that's all the money you have. And how do you not paint yourself into a corner? Make decisions that basically allow you to make further decisions later. They enable you to hedge your bets. If you get it wrong, hey, you take a different turn, you go a different direction. That's okay. But if you paint yourself into a corner with so much investment down one path and it becomes a dead end, you're stuck. Time is money, so automate it. You know, the arguments that time is some type of soft cost, it's got to go away. I can't tell you how many CFOs and financial people I talk to. Well, we can't count that in your business case, Mike, because We can't really lay off anybody and we can't make changes. Time and productivity are just as important. Opportunity cost, which we all learned in MBA 101, is a huge cost. So take the time, and then you have to be good managers at reinvesting it in the things that will make your company perform. And lastly, I encourage all of you, if you're going to take on a digital transformation, you have to inspire imagination and implore people to inspire them to take on magic. Arthur Clarke said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and I believe that to be true. I can't have leadership fail, and you can't have leadership fail from a failure of imagination. Technology is advancing so fast that things that were just impossible 2 or 3 years ago are now possible. And so your goal is to inspire them and get them there. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much. That's about our story, and I wish you the best of luck on your journey. Thank you.